Now, the National Union of Electricity Employees, NUE, has threatened to shut down the national grid again if the federal government fails to meet their demands. The Zonal Organizing Secretary, Northwest, Comrade Dukat Ayuba, says the 2 weeks given to resolve the crisis had elapsed. He said although negotiations were still ongoing, the shutting down of the national grid could go on.
Well, Comrade Ajero currently holds the positions of Deputy President, Nigeria Labour Congress, and he is the General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Employees. He joins us now here on Newsnight. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight. This is not very good news. I mean, we all experienced what played out the last time the grid was shut down. Now, your grievance this time is about government's unwillingness to resolve issues of unpaid entitlements, correct me if I'm wrong here, to former workers of the defunct power holding company of Nigeria. Just to be clear, this is 16 months between 2012, when the privatization process started, and November 2020, 2013 rather, when it was completed. Is that why we are here?
That's part of the reason why we are here.
It's playing out here. Well, tell us more. What else is playing out here? Besides what the government is owing the 16 months arrears, what else is playing out here?
Well, before the last action, there were issues of employment policy. There were issues that had to do with stigmatization of people who had worked in the sector before. There were issues of non-implementation of the agreement of 2019, issues that has to do with casualization of the workforce, issues that had to do with non-unionization, a whole lot of issues that have to do with non-remittance of pension deductions up to even 50, 60 months. A lot of all issues that has to do with precarious nature of employment relationship.
Right, Mr. Ajero, I mean, in the last 24 hours, there's been blackout all in many parts, especially in Abuja here where we are. Are you saying shutdown of the national grid has already, been set in motion? And how much window are you willing to give the federal government? Are there no other options aside from shutting down the national grid considering the socioeconomic fallout that could follow this shutdown of the national grid?
Well, let me give some clarification. What we are seeing is a kind of frustration coming from various states, various zones in the country. As at now, the National Union of Electricity Employees have not given any notice for action. Taking cognizance of the fact that just like before now, agreements are not met, and even when they set up committees, they don't live by it. They play games over. This is 5 weeks after they say 2 weeks. As of today, it's like they are joining a die. You now have to be looking for them, begging them to come down. Let us discuss this. Last week, it was the issue of the BPE telling us that their database has been corrupted. Up to now, that they are looking on how to fix it. As at this moment, nothing is happening. So when workers stop from the field, stop from the east, west, north, and south, it's based on this frustration. That doesn't mean that any strike notice has been given for any action, but you don't rule it out when these things are done with impunity. When it continues this way. So which cry became that? Which cry became that? Each time which cries, the people have to be very, very conscious of the likely consequences. So as of today, as the General Secretary of the Union, we have not met at the organs where such decisions are taken. So, but the frustrations from the field are ongoing, and we are collecting them. So that is the situation. And like we are saying, no more auction. The last action of 2019, it took 3 weeks. It took 3 years from an action in to be implemented within 3 months. So you can see again, 2 weeks, we're on the 5th week, we are still watching. I think people should equally be informed to do the right thing.
Clearly, there are a couple of demands you've raised here that border on financial, structural, and of course, infrastructure as well. Just to be sure, or just to ensure that we do not have this conversation again, which of the demands do you think the government must address immediately before things get worse?
Well, like you say in your introductory note, you said it was entitlement for, ex-workers. It is not for ex-workers, it's for ex and serving workers. But to a very large extent, the ex-workers who are not working again, need their entitlements. People are dying in thousands, in hundreds, because they can't get money to take care of themselves. Part of the money being demanded is even non-remittance of their pension deductions, which should be remitted, to the pension, the PFAs, which were not remitted. And those people outside there are crying on a daily basis. So the monetary component is where we are now. In fact, fillers from the committee, it seems to be clear that some of the other areas have been addressed, except that an agreement has not been signed. At the area of a head of service writing letter and it is misconstrued to be a circular, I think they have learned their lesson to know the difference between circular and a letter written to another officer and being implemented. So the way we do our promotion exercise, that one is clear. And some of those ones are not, the immediate problem, because the officers, who behave that way seem to have understood, what the union was saying. And the fact that the head of service said they don't reply letters to the union, all those issues have been addressed.
All right, great. Good to know that Mr. Ajero is the Deputy President, Nigeria Labour Congress, and of course, General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Workers, speaking to us there on the threat to shut down the national grid.